You're watching Force 13's live streaming service. Just tuned in to Force 13 Live. Good morning. The time here in the UK has just reached 1 o'clock in the morning. It's now July the 8th on the universal clock as it ticks over to midnight. If you're struggling with all those time zones, it's going to get a lot worse in the next hour or more as we talk about two storms, at least two storms that is. Beryl, which is moving towards the Caribbean. Atlantic Standard Time is the same as Eastern Daylight Time, where the current time right now is 8 o'clock in the evening. And of course we're watching Typhoon Maria as it moves towards the northwest, and those models continue, or have been throughout today, to deviate south. Well, is it going to hit Japan, or is it going to hit Taiwan and China, or all three of these? We're obviously going to find out in the next few days, but to talk about it with me right now tonight is David. Good evening, David. How are you?
Good evening, Nathan, and 10 o'clock here on the east coast of Australia. And as I said in my local AU, the Northern Hemisphere, the tropical scene is definitely heating up. And what does one say about Typhoon Maria?
What do you want to say about it?
Well, the Joint Typhoon Warning Centre has the 30 nautical mile ride, and they did say yesterday that it would develop further. I think the eye wall was cloud covered. I think it was 9 nautical mile ride, and I think it increased to 10, but a 30 nautical mile eye, and we have it located 334 nautical miles west of Agrahan. Apology for pronunciation. Tracking northwest at 8 knots over the last 6 hours.
And that's one of those islands very close to on the Northern Mariana Island chain. It is also, we were going to get some graphics up at the start, we were just beaten by the bell. It is 955 miles east-southeast of Miyako-jima, 1184 miles east-southeast of Taipei, and 1375 miles southeast of Shanghai at this hour. If you've got any questions or comments for us whilst we're on the air, do send us a message. We are here, we don't know how long we're going to be here for, but we're watching both of these storms right now. We're also tracking Tropical Depression 3L in the Western Atlantic. That's likely to move off towards the northeast away from land, David.
Yes, sorry, I'm just having a look at what the the National Hurricane Centre is saying. I've got Beryl. Can we go to Beryl, or you want to stick with the one off the...
You can do that.
Beryl has continued to weaken today, but there is a chance that some islands in the Lesser Antilles receiving direct impacts from wind and rainfall, where tropical storm warning warnings and watches remain in effect. Gusty winds, likely heavy rainfall will also be possible across the remainder of the Leeward Islands, Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico through early next week. However, due to its very small size, there is greater than usual uncertainty in the analysis of Beryl's current intensity, and confidence in the official intensity forecast is also lower than normal.
Yes, we're looking at the model, sort of the diagnostics here. This is as of, not sure when it was actually, it's just a few hours out of date, but it's the most up to date that we have. Obviously it's weakened from its hurricane peak that it had in the early hours of this morning last night. And it's going to be, we expect, a gradual weakening trend, but there could be some small blips in its intensity on the way to those islands. I know it takes that one small resurgence of a secondary peak intensity to possibly push it towards hurricane status. I don't think it's going to get back to hurricane status, and looking at it on the satellite imagery, quite frankly, it's not looking so well at all. But it is with these small storms that you can get intensity where you least expect it, just like we already have seen when it was first developing.
They have Beryl located at 12.4 degrees north, 52.0 degrees west, winds 45, percentile pressure, Nathan, 1003. So I would say that it's struggling.
That's probably mainly because of how small it is, no doubt.
So I think the NHC has it as a tropical storm. Yeah, the tropical storm. I've got the track on the screen, Nathan, if you...
Oh, just a moment. Let's just get back there. We're playing about with these settings here. There's David again.
So I've got tropical storm.
We don't have your... We're still
status.
You've still got your webcam on the air here.
Ah, alright, well...
You'll have to replace it with your screen. Whilst David does that, which might take a little while, I'm going to try and see if I can load up something else instead. Okay, maybe not. Not working so well. We're back to David.
Right, there we are.
You can see those satellite pictures as well. You can just about see Beryl on the top left-hand pane there. It has been moving slowly towards the islands, and David's showing us the track map there as well. Expected to move towards the islands. And also, we haven't yet mentioned the warnings that are in effect, have we? If not, here they are.
No.
The warnings are as follows, and haven't changed at the update that came out just a few moments ago. It's a tropical storm warning in effect for Dominica and Guadeloupe, a tropical storm watch for Barbados, St. Lucia, Martinique, St. Martin, St. Barthélemy, Saba, and St. Eustatius, and St. Martin. You may have heard St. Martin mentioned twice there, but they're actually, if you're unfamiliar, split into two, the Dutch and the French side, both under the tropical storm watch at this time. So what do you think of that?
I'm just thinking about the dry air and the Saharan dust impacting on Beryl.
Which it could well do indeed.
And I've got on the screen, Nathan,
yep, wind probabilities, yep.
Yep. Okay, I'll see what else.
Well, I'm going to go back to the track map, which you can see here now. There is what it does look like, blown up in large lettering there. You can clearly see where the tropical storm warning is. It's quite a small area when you look at it, and you know, I think they've pretty much got it down what the track of this storm is going to be as it moves through those islands. Whether it's still going to be a tropical storm or not remains to be seen, doesn't it?
Yes, and I've got the earliest reasonable arrival time of tropical storm force winds.
Yep, we're looking at it.
And what else have I got? We'll have a look at sea surface. Total precipitable water for the Atlantic and the Caribbean. And you can clearly see the rotation of both systems.
Yes. I think a lot of people may be interested in 3L, so we're also going to take a look now at the National Hurricane Centre's forecast for 3L, which I've got on the screen here, David. Likely to become a tropical storm, moving very slowly to the east, the National Hurricane Centre says. Now, the models a few days ago, yesterday and the previous day, were thinking about GFS and HWRF in particular, talking about this storm really grazing the coast as a significant hurricane, sort of like a Diana situation almost, if anyone remembers that one from 1984. But it doesn't look to be that way. It's now looking more like, well, I'm not sure really. It's not a GERT, because it didn't stall there, did it? You could say it's a little bit of an Alex of 2004, although it's not expected to be as strong as that. However, the HWRF thinks otherwise, although also both scenarios have it moving into Newfoundland, either as a, well, pretty much as a transitioning extratropical cyclone. Okay, well, now let's take a look, see if we can get the satellite imagery, the latest from Maria. Here it is, Maria's latest imagery. We just had a brief frame there. We're trying to get an animation up here to show you how Maria has been doing in the last hour or so. I have to be just a little bit patient whilst all of those frames load and play. But you're starting to get, you're starting to get a bit more of a picture as that. Whilst we wait for that in its entirety, let's go and take a look at what David's showing us. And it's pretty much exactly the same as the floater that we've got already on our screen. David, could you possibly show us a water vapor floater? That would be nice to see. That's a different one. That's another version of the infrared. There's the water vapor imagery. And you can see there that just a little bit of dry air off to the northwest of the storm, and it's looking a little bit, if any part of the eye wall is looking a little bit flaky right now, it is the northwestern side.
The system is forecast to continue tracking northwest, gradually turning more westward through the next 72 hours under the influence of an east-west oriented extension of the deep layer steering ridge located to the northeast. Typhoon Maria remains in a marginal favourable environment with the potential for maintaining its intensity or slightly intensifying in the near term.
And here is that satellite imagery.
Right. However, the absence of dual outflow channels, the unfavourable orientation of the TUTT, I'm not sure what that means, so limiting outflow and causing convergence to the southwest, and is currently preventing additional intensification.
That's interesting from them.
It is interesting, and I remember what they said a couple of days ago, and intensification. Beyond 72 hours, the typhoon is expected to continue tracking west-northwest through the next 96 hours under the influence of the mentioned steering ridge to the northeast. Actually, it gets a little bit technical. I'm actually reading it.
David struggles with technical, folks.
Yes. However, the track direction to shift to the north after Typhoon Maria is overland in China. The track forecast has a system passing to the south of Okinawa, north of Taiwan.
That's
So
pretty
they
much
have it veering to the, what, north of Taiwan.
just about, yes.
But
But it is a northwestward motion that we're talking about here.
And within 84 hours along the east central coast of China, approximately 350 nautical miles south of Shanghai, the timing of the projected landfall was changed due to the acceleration in the forecast along track
Now,
storm
every so often on our
motion.
screen on the left-hand side, you can see the wind probabilities as they roll around. I think it had Shanghai at about 39% or something like that. When those percentage chances appear, that is for chances of tropical storm force winds from the active cyclone in question, okay? So, that is interesting. Let's see what we've got. Start your message with Force 13, all in text, if you've got any questions. We are here to help, hopefully, and you can help us as well if you've got any questions that you have, you know. We can only answer, we can't read everyone's mind, so do put them to us and we will answer them. But that is what, there's those percentage chances on the left hand side. The highest one at the moment appears to be Miyako-jima at 54%, and if you've been watching our videos closely in the last few days, you'll see that those percentage chances have been gradually rising all along and will continue to do so all the way up until the eventual strike, as it were, because landfalls are very unlikely on islands as small as those, but it can happen. In fact, that eye is probably bigger than a lot of those islands.
30 nautical miles, Rod Island would be 30 nautical miles. They'll probably be what, a lot smaller, wouldn't they?
Some of them, yes. Here's the latest image from Himawari the Visible. This is what Maria's looking like right now, and again you can see the northwestern side just a little bit chopped off there. Not quite a full eye wall in the northwest, but it's got a bit of one, well, quite a lot of one, but and a bit of a shallow eye is what's stopping it from being stronger than what it currently is. Now let's see if we can find any evidence to the south of the storm of what David was talking about a moment ago. Okay, well, let me zoom out now. Here we go, zooming out slowly.
And wave height is 38 feet.
It must be something to do with that disjointed convective, it looks like convective outflow, but it isn't really. That's something not related to the storm, and I wonder whether that's having an impact on it, was the JWC I think we're implying, David. There's a lot of massive convective clouds over Micronesia and over Palau.
I'll just...
And then you can see to the northwest an open body of water there. Wind shear is generally low in that whole area. It is going to rise a little bit in the near term. For the next 24 hours it's sort of marginal, and then it becomes favourable again as it approaches those islands. So I'm certainly pretty concerned about what we're going to see on those islands, David, and exactly where it goes. It's probably the first time we've had a storm take a track like this for some years, if it goes all the way and piles into China. In fact, I suppose it's a bit like some of those storms in 2015, a bit further north than Sudalore and Deshen, but could well be of a similar intensity. Now, the wind field is quite considerable. Not obviously a huge wind field, but you know, typhoons always have larger wind fields by default over the Atlantic, for instance, especially when it comes to Beryl with its 30 nautical mile wind field. What is the latest on those wind field numbers from the JTWC, David?
Where are we? There's
David's
quite
lost.
a bit of detail in there.
On the main advisory, it's the first thing you'll see. Someplace or other. Maybe not.
Winfield.
I can't get to the page right now, so answers on a postcard, I suppose.
Sustained winds 125, gusting
We got that.
150, radius of 64 knot winds.
Yes.
Basically 64. 64.
I'm not sure what David's looking at, but it's there somewhere anyway. I'll try and
Yeah,
find out for you.
Sorry, but I'm just looking at their advisory, not their technical.
That's where you'll find it, in the advisory. Okay, well that's a full loss right there. Let's see if we can go and find any imagery of Beryl then, if anyone's interested, and I suppose people are. There's obviously a lot of Caribbean islands at stake, but it does appear as though Beryl's not going to be the hugest of issues, but there could still be some issues. I'm just going to get some imagery up of it right now, and that will take a few moments as well. Let's see if we've got any questions in the meantime. Lots of people saying what they think. Will Maria ever become weaker? Well, that's a very open-ended question, I must say. It will of course become weaker at some point. The question is when. Probably not until it makes landfall. Do you think that
in the short term, no.
Do you think that a Taiwan landfall is now likely? It could mean something bad for those folks down there. I would not say that a Taiwan landfall is likely yet. There is some. In fact, let's just take a look at what the models are saying on that, just for your perspective here. This is what they're saying, the latest, or some of the models are saying on Maria. You can see, first of all, the intensity panel up there on the top left. For the next 4 days or so, 3.5 days, and that 3.5 days is critical, by the way. I'll tell you why shortly. You can see that pretty much all of the models there, except the statistical ones, which don't really have any bearing anyway, all of the models to look at have it as a major category 3 or above typhoon for the next 3.5 days. Wind shear is going to be a little bit high right now, about 20 knots at most, moderate. It's going to drop, so it's going to become more conducive for Maria very soon indeed. Sea surface temperatures, no problem at all. Relative humidity could become a little bit of an issue later on, as we get towards day 3.5. Now, why is day 3.5 important? On the track forecast there, you can see the black dots just north of Taiwan. All of those black dots along those model runs, that's the 3.5 day mark. So pretty much all of the models are saying that it will be a category 3 all the way up until that mark, and then it will be weakening below category 3 intensity, and then it will go into China. But as you can see, a little bit of a split. It's very close confidence, very high confidence the first 2 days, and then you go to day 3 and 4, they diverge a little bit, the models there, and a little bit makes a crucial difference, because the CTCX has a direct landfall on Taiwan. JTWC goes just miles shy of a Taiwan landfall. GFS slightly further away. HWRF takes the most northerly approach and is the strongest out of, not all of them actually, but is stronger than GFS at least. And you would expect a stronger storm to survive for longer further north, and that would be the worst case scenario for China there, the HWRF scenario, and for Shanghai as well. So that's what all of the models are saying right now. David, you got anything for us?
I've got the current chart from the Japan Meteorological Agency on the screen. They're saying 935 millibars, maximum wind speed near the centre 95 knots, gusting 135. That's for 18 UTC on the 10th. Nathan?
Yes, that's interesting. Which dot was it for 18 on the 10th? The end of the cone.
18 UTC, yeah, 18 UTC, 935 millibars, and for 18 UTC, 24 hours earlier, they have it at 9:15.
Yeah.
But if Maria slows down and maintaining intensity...
Well, we do expect a quicker movement over the next few days. And if you look at the infrared imagery there, I do wonder whether it is just starting to accelerate now, maybe just a little bit, not sure.
And I'm just looking to see if Taiwan's got any warnings.
No, Taiwan doesn't have any warnings in
Not
effect
yet.
at the moment. I think there's some warnings for heat out there right now, and that can occur, you know, in the wake of a hurricane or a typhoon, or in its proximity. You generally get very calm conditions before the storm arrives, so it's probably going to be calm and hot in those locations before the typhoon arrives. As we saw on that Himawari 8 image not so long ago, you can see that there is a very calm atmosphere around it. Just trying to get it now. There it is. There's one look at it. The storm itself. There's a very calm atmosphere in its proximity, as you can see, towards the northwest. Now, I have some imagery of Beryl. This is what Beryl looks like. Yes. Not looking so great at the minute at all. It really isn't. Most of the convection that it did have is now seriously pushed aside to the east and to the southeast, and you can just see that tiny little plume of convection at the center of the storm as it continues to limp towards the Caribbean islands of the Lesser Antilles. We don't have the visible anymore, but just see if we can see any final frames from that visible earlier. Not sure. Let me just try that again. It's a sea of black. I don't think we're going to see any. Let's see if we can get any water vapor in that case. Hopefully water vapor won't fail me, or maybe it will. I don't know. It's sometimes temperamental. It can take a little while for everything to be ready. But if you were wondering about 3L, we may as well look at that for the time being. Tropical Depression 3, which we did mention before, but if you've just joined us, that is also active, and it's just off the coast, a little distance away from the coast of North Carolina. There are tropical storm warnings, not on land areas, but for sea areas offshore in the open North Atlantic waters. That's standard protocol. If the storm was drawing closer to land, they'd probably issue tropical storm warnings now for North Carolina, but as you can see, it's expected to move away very slowly, albeit, but even if it does intensify and grow that wind field, it surely won't be substantial enough to trigger any warnings in North Carolina. And then it will move off towards the northeast, could become a hurricane. In fact, they're predicting it. So obviously common sense along the eastern seaboard to not venture towards the possibly rough seas that may ensue depending on how close the storm gets. This could pose a threat to Atlantic Canada, though.
Yes, that remains a possibility. Nathan, the Central Weather Bureau, that's Taiwan, isn't it?
Yes.
They have Maria tracking west-northwest 18 kilometres an hour, minimum pressure 925 millibars, maximum winds 51 ms, gusting 63, radius 15 ms, 200 kilometres. So they have it, I think they actually have it faster than JTWC.
Interesting. And there again is a recent image of Typhoon Maria. So we are tracking several storms right now, several systems. And a question just came in there. What is the CDPS rating for Beryl? I can actually tell you the latest on that, Beryl is now a CDPS stage 1, which is the lowest of the scales, on the lowest of the ratings on the CDPS, meaning minor damage is likely. Maria, last time I saw, I'm not sure if it's still the case, was a stage 8, which is extreme, and if it that's mainly due to its slow movement. As it speeds up, that will probably drop to maybe stage 5 or 6, depending on what its intensity is as well. You're looking at Beryl on the water vapor imagery. Now, the yellows and the oranges are the dry air, and look at it in great abundance, and it looks like it's just finished off Beryl looking at this. Beryl's convection is fighting on, just about. You can barely see what's left of it. It is persisting. You would be forgiven for thinking that Beryl was located in the southeastern part of that image. It's actually almost central on this image. It's really struggling with that circulation, with that convection over the circulation. It is tracking towards the Lesser Antilles still at a significant speed. It will get there in just over a day. But you can see, you know, I'm not saying call off preparations or anything like this, because, as is the case with small storms, they can spin up a surprise sometimes, and it could re-intensify. And if it did, it would be significant, because a small system, but it is so small, you know, you can't overplay that. It is barely as large as Martinique is, the island that is halfway up the Lesser Antilles chain. About twice the size of Barbados is the convective flare that it's got near the centre of it, but it is really struggling in those latest frames. Whilst we're on this imagery, we could possibly go up towards the northwest. It might take another century to load, and take a look at the latest in from Tropical Depression 3L. Let's see if we can get that latest imagery. We'll get that in a moment. For the time being, I'll send it back to David.
Currently on the screen is a track chart of Maria from the Taiwan Weather Office, and this is how they see the formation. They have it changing to a west, then it starts to recurve to the west-northwest or northwest.
Just bring that track back up again there.
All right.
Okay. That was also interesting what you were showing there. But it's pretty much agreeing with, well, in fact, it's not agreeing with any one of the models of the Joint Typhoon Warning Center. It's going a little bit further south than what the Joint Typhoon Warning Center is saying. Taiwan.
Here we go. We've got.
Or is it? I can't. Just calling. Just about a landfall. Is that very slight landfall? No such thing as a slight landfall, but just about a landfall there, by the looks of things.
Yeah, so they've chopped. Try this one again. There we are.
That's the short. Okay, there it is, in full, and a curvature towards the north, towards the end of that forecast period too.
Okay.
All right. So no warnings in effect yet in Taiwan, and in Japan I don't believe there are any yet. I don't suppose you want to bring up the news from Japan that resulted from an unrelated incident, David?
Yes, as I mentioned in the update that I did last night, unfortunately 27 people have lost their lives. Emergency services over there are searching for 40 people. This is due to the severe weather event.
Severe flash flooding that occurred in Japan in the last few days from a frontal system, nothing to do with Maria, but that did happen not so long ago, last 48 hours. And so Japan might be thankful to not see Maria in its entirety, although some of the islands could still get some significant impacts. We'll come back to that if need be. Let's go and take a look again at the latest imagery that I've got here. This is now of Tropical Depression 3 in the Western Atlantic, just off the coast of North Carolina. You can see how it's been developing. It's looking better by the hour by the looks of things. And I don't think tropical storm intensity is too far away for this one, David.
Sorry, Nathan, I missed that. I was distracted, and if you'd just like to...
Tropical Depression 3. I'll just read out what the National Hurricane Center said in the earlier update. The next update, by the way, comes in 2.5 hours. An Air Force reconnaissance plane investigated the depression a few hours ago. I'm not sure if there's been another one since. There could be one right now, I'm not sure. The circulation was still somewhat elongated, with a minimum pressure of 1015, which is interesting because they went with 1014 in their advisory. And as for Beryl, 50 miles an hour, still 1003 millibars. The key messages from the National Hurricane Center: it's continued to weaken. There's a greater than usual uncertainty, and confidence in the official intensity forecast is also lower than normal, but it is looking very poor on that satellite imagery that we saw not so long ago.
And I have the central pressure at 1014. Interest along the coast of North Carolina should monitor the progress of this system, but it's only 35 miles per hour sustained winds, and they have it stationary, Nathan.
Yeah. Yes. It is almost stationary, yes. And to be honest, looking at this imagery, I'm not sure which way I could call it if it was moving, what direction. It's supposed to be east, but it looks to me like it may be just a little tint of south. But it is, for all intents and purposes, pretty much stationary.
And for the people along the coastal region, swells generated by the depression are expected to increase and affect portions of the coast of North Carolina, mid-Atlantic states this weekend. Swells could cause life-threatening surf and whip current conditions. So the system generating dangerous surf conditions, the whip currents. So,
and there you can see the
going into water would be a no-go zone.
There you can see the last of the visible imagery for 3L as well today. Yep, centre of circulation clearly there. Tropical storm force winds, well, they didn't find any apparently. I should think that will be a tropical storm very soon indeed, maybe at the next advisory.
Nathan, I've got the JMA chart on the severe weather. The purple area represents the emergency warning. This is the flash flooding.
Yeah, we're seeing it, yeah. So you can see significant chunks of Japan there, almost all of the island of Shikoku, and one province there further towards the northeast. I'm not sure which one that is, but that is getting up towards the northeast, not far from Osaka as far as I'm aware. But it is a bit of a mess out there in Japan.
Yes.
And you can see the southwestern islands there. The Okinawa region is a little inset there in the top left of your screen. No, bit further north, David. Right up the top left. No, There, yes,
No.
finally
There.
you got there.
Alright.
Good as
I'm
me.
not good when it comes to geography, but I am
Or
learning
directions.
people. So
No warnings.
Considering-
No warnings on those islands yet, by the looks of things. So,
no.
you know, Maria is still quite far away. Quite. Not hugely. And as I take us back to the forecast, the models, it will first affect some of the Japanese islands 2.5 days from now. So we're talking about, what day are we on now? Saturday? Are we even on Saturday anyway? Sunday. You know, Tuesday night is when the storm will really be felt on those Japanese islands.
And Nathan, I have the satellite imagery, the Typhoon Maria. I think that's it. Hang on, I'll just double check. Bell. Actually,
Beryl.
I've got Bell. All right, let's have a look at Bell. Here we go.
Yeah, that's RAM imagery of Beryl. And
Yes.
those who are familiar with RAM imagery are used to seeing storms much larger than that because the scaling is the same each time on RAM. Goes to show just how small Beryl is compared with your average cyclone.
What is the size of Bell? I think it's only, what, 120 nautical miles or what, 60 nautical miles?
Well, it depends what you're referring to, doesn't it? Are you referring to the cloud coverage, or are you referring to the gale force winds, which are only around 30 or 40 nautical miles in radius? You know?
I was just thinking if we added a couple of degrees, or 1 degree either side, whether it would be, what, 120, 60 nautical mile wide. But as you said,
Not very
Nathan, it's
large.
very...
Diameter,
very
you know,
small.
when it first formed, it was something like 115 miles across, this whole cloud coverage area. It might have got a bit more than that, probably did. Right now, it's not very large at all. We've been talking low numbers the whole time.
But Bell, the site was down yesterday, so I've got Bell on this. Not Bell,
Maria, yes.
Maria on the side.
Now, are you looking? That's the whole life of Maria.
The whole,
there, yeah?
Yep, which I couldn't access yesterday because, as Nathan and I were saying earlier, the site was down yesterday, but it's good to have it back up. And we should see. Now, I think it went through, what, one eyewall replacement?
Yes, a very notable one indeed. You first saw that pinhole eye that it had a few days ago. It looked exceptional, didn't it? And then it went away. And then it's been pretty much struggling for a while to get that new eye. It has been there for some time, but it's finally managed to filter through to the surface.
Just nice. About the last 5 frames.
Yeah, and you can see the latest there. How strong do you think it is right now?
What's central pressure? 930.
2 people thinking it's stronger than the 145 miles an hour the JTWC have out for it.
Yeah, and the JTWC's only doing, 6 hourly advisories?
As is standard.
Yep. But I'm just wondering, oh no, they've actually updated.
They must have done it very early.
Let's see what they're saying. 18.4 degrees north, 139.7.
Interesting. I've got some I've got the rapid imagery back of it again so we can take another look. Here's how the storm's been progressing.
125 knots, gusting 150.
That's believable. Certainly believable. And there it is.
And I have it remaining at that intensity for the next 36 hours.
And it could strengthen as well. You know, what they're doing with that is it's sort of like Beryl, really. They don't really know what's going to happen, so they're just leaving it as it is. But, you know, I think that's right, because the wind shear with it lowering could mean that the storm intensifies significantly later on, but also the dry air could take a toll on Maria as well later too. So it could go one way or the other. It depends on how that shield is running against that dry air to the northwest, and the eye wall, you know, is still a little bit thin up there on the northwestern side, and that's why it's been struggling a little bit. And the eye is also not as deep as it could be either. Certainly not as well defined as it could be. But that's the latest on Maria. 145 miles per hour right now. 930 millibars was the last update. We might have some news on that shortly.
So, Nathan, I'm just thinking about the steering mechanisms with Maria, and going back to the Southern Hemisphere last season with the steering mechanisms of the system. So I'm going to say it's these steering ridges that are impacting the typhoon. Sea surface temperature, I think, is around 30 Celsius. So we know the environmental conditions are favourable. I haven't looked at the wind shear yet.
Wind shear for which storm now, or is just doing something else there?
Maria.
Yeah, well, as noted earlier on the models, you can see it again here that we were talking about earlier. The model's generally saying that wind shear is virtually peaking around now, and it's going to drop after that. So, again, we could see strengthening in the next 24 to 48 hours. Could be significant, but at the minute, no signs of it. And we haven't touched on the models for 3L yet either on this particular graphic, and I want to take that opportunity to do it now, David, before we get towards the end of the hour. And I think we're only just going to stay here for this hour because I think we've, you know, pretty much covered all bases. So if you do have any questions, do put them in as quick as possible. You can see the gradual intensification there from the models. GFS has a minimal hurricane, CTCX has a category 1, HMON has a category 2 briefly there, HWRF category 3. So, you know, quite a variation between the several models there. And I'm not sure what exactly that comes down to. HMON has higher SSTs overall. And HWRF really isn't fond of the SSTs actually, which I find amazingly interesting in how it manages to predict the strongest storm but has the lowest sea surface temperatures. It also has generally just about the lowest wind shear, but not by much at all. So I'm not sure really basically what the HWRF is seeing in the storm. Wind shear won't rise until much later when it's reaching Newfoundland, so this could be a significant storm for Atlantic Canada. Depends how close it gets to Nova Scotia there. But Newfoundland could see, if it's still tropical, it could be a category 1. If it isn't, it could still be of hurricane force as well.
I've got the HWRF model up on 03.
Well, this is another representation of what I've just been saying. And we've got some breaking news. Maria has been raised to 150 miles per hour and a pressure of 924. That is breaking news. Maria has intensified, according to the ATCF, now 150 miles per hour, pressure of 924. David, your thoughts?
Well, the Joint Typhoon Warning Centre said that it would intensify again, and I think this is, what, third time or second time that it's intensified. I'm going to go for this second time. So, as Nathan said, central pressure is 920, 4
yeah.
millibars, located 19.1 degrees north, 138.8 degrees east, and winds 130 knots. So
it doesn't look as good as it did a few hours ago, is what I find fascinating about that. The eye doesn't look still quite as good as it did 2 hours ago, say. So, no, well, yeah, I can understand it, but it's interesting. I would have kept it at 145 personally, but it's only 5 miles an hour difference and it's not affecting land, so I suppose opinions aren't wrecking lives at the minute. But interesting from the JTWC ATCF there. Not official, that, by the way. Everyone, and we may be guilty of it sometimes as well, JTWC and the ATCF is not the official source, but it is an opinion, and we have our own here as well. The JMA are the officials in the area, to a lot of people's not very happy about that, and well, mainly because of what they, you know, a lot of meteorologists think that their estimates are way off base. I'm inclined to agree on many occasions. They usually go too conservative. David, how do you think it's looked in the last few hours? Do you think it's stayed the same, intensified, or weakened a little bit?
Well, I'm just looking at the VORAC imagery on the NOAA floater on Maria, and I'm saying that she's remaining as she was earlier. I'm just looking at what the JMA...
I should also bring to you the news as well that Beryl, according to the ATCF, has weakened further to 45 miles per hour. That did break a little while ago now, but that's just for confirmation. 45 miles an hour and a pressure of 1005. Not confirmed. We're waiting for the National Hurricane Center to confirm that. They're still saying 50 miles per hour.
Nathan, the JMA is saying 925, and they've updated, and you need to help me, 005. So 50 minutes past, what, midnight on the 8th. They have it at 925, maximum winds 100 knots, gusting 140.
Now, when you quote those numbers of 100 knots, that is in 10-minute sustained winds, so that is actually 130 miles an hour. Still way too low in my opinion, isn't it? And pretty much everyone else's, I should think. That's what I mean when they seem to go too conservative quite often with those winds.
Okay, now 12 UTC, they have it at 915. Gusting 150 knots.
And when they say that, that usually means category 5. They're obviously predicting intensification, and that could happen, but at the minute, no obvious signs that Maria is intensifying.
So basically, would I be right to say that the JMA, acknowledging what you said, that the official forecaster, and the JTWC is in line with the JMA?
Well, they're not really, because JTWC only predicted a little bit of strengthening up to what they say it is now 150 miles per hour, and then pretty much staying the same, then gradual weakening trend. So JMA a little bit more aggressive, I would say.
And the JMA, they update, what is it, every 3 hours?
I believe so.
And when's their next update?
3 hours after the last one. You said 050 UTC, did you? Just now, that
yes.
must be. Yeah. So that is literally
right.
just happened. They're up.
And for 0 UTC on the 11th, they have it at 950 millibars. But
yeah,
only
that is
gusting
after.
140.
That is after it strikes the islands.
So there's no warnings in place for Taiwan. It'll be, what, a couple of days before we would see warnings?
We're still just over 2 days out. So I would say
right.
Either tonight local time or tomorrow morning you'll start to see warnings either for Japan, Japanese islands, or for Taiwan. Sounds about right to me anyway.
Nathan, one viewer is asking whether Maria could reach 165 miles per hour.
Well, when Maria was first peaking as a Category 5, I thought for certain that it was going on to go to 175 or more. It didn't, however, remain at 160. It will have another chance. It really could. Bit of a pseudo-law, perhaps. At the minute, I'm not seeing it just now, but it could get to 165. Maybe not any higher than that now. But it remains... Maria remains to prove me wrong.
And Beryl, weakening?
Beryl's looking terrible, as we saw on the earlier imagery. But just to reiterate, we are about to finish the show. The warnings, before we finish up here. A tropical storm warning is in effect for Dominica and Guadalupe. A tropical storm watch is in effect for Barbados, St. Lucia, Martinique, St. Martin, and St. Bart's. And also for Saba and St. Eustatius, and also for St. Martin. So a lot of those Caribbean islands, but the main focal point that we're looking at here is Dominica and Guadeloupe, David, which could see tropical storm force winds, but the chances are escaping us a little bit of seeing tropical storm force winds on any of those islands as time progresses, because it's looking more and more unlikely, with Beryl really diminishing before our eyes.
And what is the cause of a diminishing dry air?
It looks to be dry air.
Wind shear? Dry air. And what about the dust?
Could have a playing factor, but dry air is, you know, it is synonymous almost with the dust.
Yeah.
They go hand in hand, so, you know, it is one of those dry factors. And because Beryl's so small, I think it was really a matter of time before we saw something like this. But word of warning to those on the Lesser Antilles, and I'm sure they will have plenty of preparation after what happened last year. But, you know, we're looking at Beryl, and you never know, it could get a little bit of strength back. What we do know for certain is that it's going to be very small, incredibly small. Beryl has been the whole time. And if it does strike one of those islands as a tropical storm, its effects will probably only be limited to 1 or 2 of those islands. Those tropical storm watches are there just in case Beryl deviates from its projected path.
Could Beryl fade and become a trough?
It could become a remnant. No, look at the imagery here again. See if you can spot Beryl with untrained eyes. It's very difficult. On the right hand side of the image you can just about make out its circulation underneath that convection. I think anyone who's ever seen a tropical cyclone knows that Beryl doesn't look very good as tropical cyclones go. It's looking appalling. Still got 45-mile-an-hour winds because convection doesn't make the full story. It does still have tropical storm force winds. It will be residual even without convection as a naked swirl after that. The winds will probably still be with it for around 6 or 12 hours before it's completely gone, unless it blows up with some more convection, but it's looking increasingly unlikely as time goes on. I'm becoming more convinced that that may not happen because of all this dry air, this massive bank of dry air that's flowing with it, and it's really taking a toll on the storm, and it's really struggling as a result. David? If he's still with us. Where have you gone?
Oh, sorry. Oh. I pushed the mute button. Nathan, back to Typhoon Maria. How many times have we seen Maria used in the rest pack?
Oh, I'm not sure. Probably a few
in recent years. And should it be retired?
That has been a prevailing question recently, hasn't it?
Yeah, well, I'm just picking up on a earlier comment from one of our viewers, and
Maria has been used 3 times in the West Pacific: 2000, 2006, and 2012. It's here again in 2018. All right.
And yep, well, I appreciate that, and I appreciate the interaction from the viewers, and it's been good to provide the information. And considering Nathan's expertise, I'm still learning, but
really?
I've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed it.
Well, there we are. Thank you very much, David, for that.
It's been good, mate.
You've been watching Force 13 Live. We'll be going off the air now. We'll be back again, who knows when, if we're doing another live event in the future, but of course we'll tell you about it if we are doing one. Of course, we will have regular updates on the channel on YouTube as Maria develops, as Beryl draws closer to land in the Caribbean. Obviously, you can follow Force 13 on its many outlets, and you can also be part of our Discord server if you've got Discord. Add my account Fool13, add extension 9094 for an invite. You can also just talk to me if you like, if you find that interesting at all. Probably not. You can also add Force 13 on Skype. You can also follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Search Force 13 all in text. And I think that covers all of our bases. You can of course also help the project through Patreon as well if you feel so inclined, because we do run basically with ourselves, and that's about it. And you can find out more about that and all the rewards available to you. But there we are. That's it for Beryl and Maria. Stay tuned, and for those on the eastern coast of Asia, stay safe as we continue to watch this impending storm. And we'll be here to tell you all about it all the way through up until its eventual landfall. Stay tuned, and that's all for now. Good night.